Hello, everyone. I'd like you to please invite you to take a moment to locate your cell phone and devices and make sure they're on silent or turned off. Oh. And while you're doing that, I'll take a moment to thank a number of groups and people that have helped make today come together. First of all, the Chateau for donating the space that we're all sitting in today. To Global Encore, the AV company that's donated their equipment for us to have this together today. To Tim Smith and Rebecca from the Whistler Writers Festival for doing the live streaming and recording of the event today. It's being broadcast very widely. To Bruce's family from the Blackcomb Ski Patrol and mine as well for doing a whole bunch of different things to help set up today and make this possible, and to Richard Wine for coordinating that, and Richard just in general for your reliable and regular availability for stepping into this fertile and sacred space of loss and grief for so many of us. And then to the Whistler Healthcare Foundation and Bruce's colleagues at the clinic for covering the remaining costs that we had today. Welcome. Welcome, Holly. Welcome, Max, Paul, Natalie, Andrew. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry for your loss and for your family's loss. And to Brian and Bruce's brother Brian in Vernon and his parents, Will and Mary. They're joining us online. Welcome. We're so glad you can join us in that way today. Welcome to all of you. We're here to share some memories, some tears, some laughs, as we consider the incomprehensible loss of a beautiful and gifted man. Seeing you all here, he was so loved, so well connected to so many different people in this community and beyond. He was multi-talented. He was a big, rich, soulful, generous, fabulous life that he lived that is worth celebrating. That's what we intend to do today. I'm Chuck Ratzlaff. I've known Bruce for about 25 years. We first met when we were working together with the Canadian Alpine Ski Team Medical Group. And then for the last 23 or 4 years in the Blackcomb Ski Patrol, in our medical work that overlapped. And he was kind of a big brother to me. He had that kind of an influence on me, and particularly when it came to new sports. He was an early adapter with quite a few different sports, and stand-up paddling was one of them. He was way ahead of the curve with that sport, and he said, "Chuck, you got to get into this. This is fabulous. You know, you don't have to sit down like a kayak. You stand up and paddle." And he sent me a link for a board that he told me to buy, so I bought it. And now I've got 4 subs. And then he's one of the first to get 29-inch wheels on his mountain bike. And he said, "Chuck, you got to get 29-inch wheels. They're the way to go." And he did start riding better. There's no question about it. So I got 29-inch wheels. And then shortly after that, he got 27.5-inch wheels. Sold his 29. He said, "Chuck, you got to go 27.5. It's the way to go." So I got 27.5-inch wheels. And his last bike is a 29er. Again, I was still 27. And then he took up wing foiling. And he said, "Chuck," he sent me this video of this guy just sailing off into the sea. And he said, "You got to get into wing foiling. It's the new thing." I'm like, "I got so many toys, Bruce." You know, he says, "Well, you know, you got to get into it." And I said, "Well, I'm going to watch you and how well you take up this sport." I never got a wing foil. I'd like to invite us all today, and this is the wish of Holly, Max, and our close group of friends, to talk about mental health and depression, anxiety, trauma. Many have said to me, to Holly, to others, that you had no idea that Bruce was working with this, that you didn't really know him, I guess. I'd like to suggest that you probably did. Bruce had a type of depression that was episodic. It did not respond to treatment. It lasted a number of months and then it went away. It wasn't something that was chronically there between episodes. And what you saw, the joy and connection and humility, that was Bruce. And it's like, depression's like many other diseases we deal with every day, like cancer, like heart disease, like diabetes. It waxes and it wanes and it recurs and remits, and it's fatal for some people. And this may be like a heart attack kind of a thing if you're thinking cardiac disease, an acute event that took his life. I feel fortunate to have walked quite a bit of the last 6 weeks of his life with him, as I know a number of us did. And we were kind of shared a bond around mental health. It was present in both our families. And I had my first encounter with mental health in 2016. I was dealing with a couple of significant stressors, one professional, one personal, and they came together, and I experienced, my first episode. And it turns out later, Bruce told me this, that I was isolating. I wasn't responding to text messages or phone calls. I was busy working, overworking. I didn't know that at the time. So anyways, after a number of texts that I didn't answer from Bruce, I was in Vancouver at the time. I got a text message, and it was Bruce. And he said, "Hey, Chuck, I'm at a Starbucks 4 blocks from your house. I got a tea with your name on it. Can you come on out?" I was like, "You effer, you turkey." So I dragged my butt out of bed and went down there. We walked on Kitts Beach, and he said, "How you doing?" And I said, "I'm stressed." He said, I can't sleep. I said, "If everything else is fine. If I could sleep, I'll be fine." He said, "Mm-hmm. How's your diet? You lost any weight?" "Nah, not much, 15 or 20 pounds. Mm-hmm. Questions 3 to 7. He went on to ask me. He said, "I tell you what you got." I said, "What's that?" "You got a problem." And he got me started on treatment the next day. And I responded, thankfully, and dealt with the stressors. And since that time, we've shared a lot of conversations and experiences around mental health together. And, it was really, he drove from Whistler to Vancouver for that coffee, or that tea and that walk for me. And then fast forward to this last April, and I'm at a party that he's playing music at, and he loved playing music, as you guys know. And I asked him at a break, "Are you having fun up there?" And he said, "Not really." And I was just set back on my heels. I said, "What's up?" He goes, "I feel a bit funky." And so we went for a ski the next day at Callahan, and he told me, he goes, I think it's starting again." And so I said, "Have you started treatment?" And he says, "No, not yet, it's early." I said, "Oh, Dr. Mohr." I said, "Take your time, but have you thought, is there any diseases you know of that are better if we wait to treat them downstream?" I said, "Take your time." He said, "You effer." And he started treatment the next day. And he didn't isolate. He worked really hard. He really tried hard to stay with us. I can tell you that from the bottom of my heart. Every time myself or others, friends of his, asked him to mountain bike, to play guitar, to have dinner, he said yes in the last 6. And he wasn't alone. He was with somebody almost every day in the last week or 2 of his life. He tried really hard. And this disease completely takes away your perspective. It's a disease of the mind. It robs you of the ability to see. Can you imagine an alarm going off in your head 24/7? That's what happens with depression. The fight or flight button in our brain goes off. We don't get access to this part of our brain where all the connection, reason, and love and perspective is. And that goes offline. It was heartbreaking to see this. It robbed him of everything that was good about him. He couldn't see it. When I reminded him that he had helped me so much in 2016, he said, "I did that? I did something that good?" And it just alerted me to how much he was suffering, and for those of us who know this disease, that kind of suffering is incomprehensible hell. Like, it is awful. It's blackness. And some of us, and many of us, actually know something of the dark and tormented feelings and thoughts the malfunctioning brain cannot make us feel. But even though that we knew this was possible, Bruce, with depression, that this outcome could happen, when that pane of glass broke on Sunday night a few weeks ago, we were gutted by the shock, by the suddenness, by the finality. We hate that you're gone. It's an unimaginable loss to the family, incomprehensible loss to our community. But in our hearts, Bruce, we understand. We know this disease can do this. No one is above this. There's so much work to be done in our medical community, in our research community, and I'm part of that. So I can say this, to better understand and treat this disease. And we're sorry, Bruce. We're sorry we didn't get to you in time. But I'm so grateful for your friendship, Bruce, the time we did have. Many of you may not know this, but before medicine, Bruce started to study music after high school. He was going to be a career in music. So when he came back, when he started to phase out of the medical world, he started to really, rejuvenate and reattach to his music roots. And he was also going to be a clergy at one point, which I confirmed with Holly. He told me that. And I'm like, did he really say that? And Holly said, yeah, he did say that. Yeah, he is true. Yeah. So I got this slide up here for a couple reasons. This is his front door, and this is the note he would put up when we all played music on his patio. And he loved to organize music get-togethers and jams, and we started to do it regularly the last couple summers. And he'd put this note up on his desk. And the first thing I want to point out is that above that, there's that sticker that says Live Aloha, which he had up on his desk. He loved Hawaii, which is why I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt. And for those who don't know, the aloha word is more than hello and goodbye. It's a way of life. The word itself, alo, means presence. Oha, to receive friendship. Ha, life or breath. The joyful sharing of life energy in the present moment. And similar to the Zulu concept of Ubuntu, I am because we are. Your pain is my pain, your joy is my joy. And this is how I think of Bruce, living the aloha spirit. And the second part of that, the come on in, we're on the patio, exclamation mark on a musical score, so Bruce. And he was so inclusive with music and with other things too, but music, he would bring us all in, and it didn't matter what your ability was. He said, come on in and just join the circle. I'll teach you a couple chords and you can play along. And when we started playing guitar together, my guitar ability, I don't want to say mediocre, but let's go with mediocre. Modest. But there was no greater champion or encourager for me with my guitar and my singing than Bruce. And it's one of the things I'll miss the most. One thing I will say though, he was kind of the rhythm police, hey Jen? He was like yeah, right? I had kind of a casual relationship with the 4/4 beat. Sometimes on purpose, sometimes by accident. And he'd occasionally stop me and say, what are you doing, Chuck? And I'd say, making music. He says, well, is there any chance we could do it on the beat? In his generous moments, he would say I was soulful and a good storyteller, but it was kind of code for stay on the beat. Aloha, Bruce. I'd like to introduce as the next speaker here Holly and Max. Holly, Bruce's beloved daughter, who he couldn't have been more proud of. I'm sure many of you have got to watch Holly surfing a wave in Costa Rica that went on for about 30 seconds. I know I saw it 7 or 8 times, and then Holly got hired at the National Arts Center, and then she got a promotion, and then basically she was running the National Arts Center in Ottawa. And Max, I know, and Max, I know he vetted you quite early. Like Max hasn't known Bruce's quite as long, but I know he gave you the frank, what are your intentions with my daughter? But he fell so hard for you. I don't want to say man crush, but but he loved you, Max, and he loved you, Holly, beyond words. So I'd like to invite you up to say a few words.
Whoa. It's a lot of people. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. For the hundreds of people I haven't yet met, thank you. My name is Holly. I am Bruce's favorite daughter, favorite child. I want to begin by thanking everyone for coming out today to celebrate my dad, and for anyone that's watching online. It's incredible to feel the love and support from the community through this difficult time. So on behalf of my family, Max and Jackson, and my grandparents, my uncles, one of whom is here today, and my cousins, one of whom is also here today, I want to say thank you so much. While I'm on a roll, I want to give a few more shout outs. The first to a fantastic group of humans I've lovingly been calling my surrogate Whistler family. And these folks have been the driving force behind the celebration today. I'm worried I will never be able to express my gratitude to you guys. So Chuck, Jen, Robin, John, Pam, Paul, and Linda, I truly, truly love you guys. Finally, Max. Who's been by my side and unshakable through this time. He has been brave and strong and clear-headed and kind in this time when he too is mourning, and has kept our family together. It's no secret, as Chuck said, my dad loved Max, and I know he'd be really grateful to you for supporting me and the family in the way that you have. It's exactly how he would have done it, so I love you. This has been a very difficult time. Losing my father so suddenly and under these circumstances was not something I think anyone is ever prepared for. But I also wasn't prepared for the enormous outpouring of love and support from the community. Every email, letter, and text has been an amazing opportunity to learn about just how multifaceted and incredible my dad's life was, and most of all, how loved he was. A common thread I've heard a lot since he passed was how humble he was, so I feel as his daughter, it's my duty to brag just a little bit about his accomplishments. So just indulge me while I take you through some details of his life before he arrived in Whistler almost 30 years ago. My dad was actually born in St. Boniface, Manitoba in 1957 to my grandparents Willard and Mary Mohr. However, he spent his formative years in Brighton, Ontario, which is a really small town between Kingston and Toronto. I called my grandma the other day and asked, how on earth she dealt with 3 young boys. He's the oldest of 3 brothers. And she had nothing but amazing things to say about their childhood, despite them being rambunctious. And she particularly remembers my dad smiling very early as a baby. He quickly became a helpful and responsible big brother to Paul and Brian. So they lived in a log home on 4 acres where they had 2 horses, and they played a ton of sports and took yearly trips to BC to visit family. My grandma did share that eventually the horses were ignored in favor of motorbikes. In high school, my dad was part of many sports teams. He was a gifted athlete his whole life, surprise, surprise. And he excelled academically and also participated in musicals. He did Oklahoma, the musical, in his final year. We all heard a lot about that. And he graduated as valedictorian and actually took the prom queen, who I believe was called Wendy, to prom. After high school, he joined the Royal Military College for 1 year, not so much out of a love for his country, but because he heard the national badminton champion was studying there and he wanted to play as his doubles partner. So after RMC, this is when he took a year off and he worked in Toronto studying at the Royal Conservatory of Music. Likely comes as no surprise to folks, as Chuck mentioned, he contemplated a career in music at that time. Clergy didn't last as long in contemplation, but that is true. Instead, he ended up studying kinesiology at the University of Waterloo, and he is the gold medalist of his year, which I am to understand is a kinesiology term, and it makes sense in context. After studying kin, he was accepted to do an MD, PhD program at McMaster, but he wanted to live somewhere where he could cross-country ski. So he chose to do medical school at the University of Ottawa in close proximity to the Gatineaus. He then completed his family medicine residency in Calgary and worked in Alberta, BC, and New Zealand before doing his emergency medicine year also in Calgary and eventually moving to Whistler in '96. And the rest, you guys can fill in the blanks probably better than I can. So in all his years, he really became known as a friend, a doctor, a teacher, a musician, a brother, a son. The list, which is so impressive, goes on, and you'll hear from his friends and colleagues about the impact that he had. I feel really honored and very lucky to be the only person on the planet that can speak to him as a father. I'm sure it'll come as no surprise to anyone, he was the best father out there. I grew up in Ontario with my mom, and somehow he managed to never miss a moment, big or small. Living across the country from each other provided us a unique opportunity to develop a relationship that was full of one-on-one, uninterrupted time and attention. We had the chance to go on grand adventures together, but he also just existed in my world. He was there for big things like dance recitals and graduations, but he was also there to pick me up from school dances on Friday, to attend parent-teacher interviews, and to drive me to and from swimming lessons. When I was very young, I used to ask him when he was coming home next, which I was referring to Ottawa. And I think that's a testament to how present he was. This is something I've come to appreciate as an adult. Despite his busy and accomplished life, he always had me as his top priority, even from 4,500 kilometers away. Since he passed, I've actually come to learn just how present he was in my day-to-day. I found a box of emails from 2007 between him, my mother, and my math tutor. And in these emails, it described me not reaching my full potential and refusing to comply with program expectations. So this is just an example of parenting from afar that he's doing. In recent years, as an adult and responsibilities of my own, I asked him how on earth he managed to make the trip so often and keep it up so consistently. And he very reluctantly shared that it meant giving up job opportunities that conflicted with our 7 p.m. Tuesday night calls, or travel opportunities that would mean too long passing in between our visits. I know he sacrificed a lot more than even that to make sure I felt most important. He also, in many ways, was the glue that kept our family together. He's notorious for forwarding emails of everyone's news to each other and acting as the mastermind between many of the Mohr family adventures. I know he was particularly proud of pulling off a surprise trip to Disneyland for my cousins and I. We were all up at Whistler during the summer, and he told us we were going to the P&E for the day. We're like, okay. And then we were really confused when we ended up at the airport. Weird. Even more confused when we landed at LAX, and super stunned getting on a bus to Anaheim, having no clue that Disneyland is in Anaheim. Anyway, it was a total trip that stands out for us in core memory. So the times also spent in Ontario when we were younger stand out. We would go camping, we would play road hockey, but that was against my will. And we would spend time often up at Whistler, either at his home in Emerald, where he would build us this really probably unsafe makeshift pump track trick course in the backyard, and more recently at his home by Alta Lake, where we would spend the days hanging out and taking turns on his paddle boards. Another group of memories that has surfaced while writing this speech I will refer to as Bruce's hypocritical. Chuck. I'd like to invite everyone to take a moment to please turn off their cell phone. Okay, sorry. Chuck's the best. Sorry, another group of memories that stands out while I was writing this, we're going to call Bruce's various attempts to get Holly involved in the Whistler lifestyle. So a few folks have mentioned my dad would talk about me here and there. And so some might know that I grew up dancing. I'm a ballerina. I'm an artist, not an athlete, okay? And so I've never been super talented at skiing or mountain biking. I think I'm the only person on the planet that had a season's pass to Whistler, and I'd average like 1 or 2 runs a year. I also had a really nice mountain bike that I used mostly to get in and out of town to buy wine, but I digress. So he was always super patient with me, either on the hill or on the trails. And we had some of our best chats sipping hot chocolate at the rendezvous or sharing a sandwich on a bike trail. And we bonded over our love for the arts while we were mountain biking, ironically. But we never ran out of things to talk about, and he truly was my best friend. I was super stoked when he started paddleboarding and surfing and all of that, because this is something we did a lot of together that I had the balance, so I could actually do it. And we traveled to Hawaii and Costa Rica, and most recently to Mexico with my husband and son. And we continued our life chats on the water. I will forever cherish the time we spent in Mexico last year. I have a distinct memory calling him to ask if he thought it was a good idea to travel with an 8-week-old baby to a small town in Mexico for 1 month. And I knew full well it was risky, so I thought it would be prudent to have an emergency physician with us. But he was like beyond stoked. I'm gonna probably break this, but this photo is necessary for the rest of the story. No. Yeah. So he said, yeah, of course, I'll come to Mexico with you, that's awesome, but we have to get a picture of Jackson on a surfboard. Like, okay, fine. This is actually Father's Day of last year. That's my husband, Max, and my kid, Jack. So anyway, it was beyond terrifying. A few people have heard this story. I will point out the large waves in the background. This is an 8-week-old baby on a surfboard, but I can hear his voice in my head. They're like, oh, it's fine. We'll do it really quick. You'll be fine. It's going to be fun. Like, we can all hear it, right? The classic tone he took while coaxing us into crazy things. But he had this uncanny ability to make even the scariest moments seem totally under control, even fun. And he could inspire confidence in you even when you were severely uncomfortable. But this was one of his greatest superpowers, I think, especially as a dad. Another superpower he had was he always made sure you knew how proud he was of you. He loved celebrating other people's accomplishments and had a way of making you feel supported no matter what. Every time I had a new idea about which path my life would take, of which there was a couple, he was there 100%. If I wanted to work at summer camp and make $0, he told me about the life skills I'd acquire and the friendships I'd make. If I wanted to apply for an internship I was wildly underqualified for, he would help edit my resume and then commiserate with me when I inevitably did not get the job. And when I did get my first real job, he sent me a copy of The Wealthy Barber and offered to sit down and explain investing. And I still have no idea how it works, but Dad, I will learn, I promise. And when I called to tell him that Max and I were getting married, I think that's a moment in recent history where he was the most proud. He said I was making the best decision of my life and that he wanted to write a song to perform at our wedding, which he did. And he was right about the best decision too. So until very recently, I believe being a father was his main priority. But that did change drastically when Jackson arrived on the scene in March of last year. His excitement to hear I was pregnant and his immediate bond with Jackson was incredible to watch. When he came to Ottawa to meet Jackson really soon after he was born, he would spend hours playing Jackson's songs on the guitar and piano, and Jack was totally mesmerized. So much so that when he was 8 months old, we enrolled him in music lessons, which he loved so much we actually got kicked out. Jackson was so used to climbing, jumping, and singing along with Grandpa that he got a little over-enthusiastic with the music instructor. But I'm really happy to say that we've kept one of my dad's guitars, especially for Jackson, and we will play him the many videos we have of Grandpa Bruce playing the guitar to him. He was an amazing grandpa to Jackson, and one of the hardest things about this is thinking about all the plans that he had with Jack and with our baby girl, who's arriving next month. He talked about paddling with them on Alta Lake when they'd visit in the summer, teaching them how to downhill ski and playing soccer with them in the backyard. My husband and I have talked at length about how we can make sure these plans come to fruition in my dad's honor. We were actually playing soccer on his lawn this morning with Jackson. We've also decided to pay tribute to my dad, whose middle name was Philip, and our daughter's middle name will be Philippa. I take comfort in knowing that he lived his life to the fullest in the last couple of years. He was traveling, he was delving deep into his music, he was paddling around the world, speeding, I'm sure, in his new car, spending time in Vernon, Calgary, and Ottawa with family, and leaning hard into grandparenthood. In short, I think he was having an absolute blast, and I know, given the circumstances of his death, that can be confusing, so I hope to shed some light on that. As Chuck mentioned, my father suffered from intermittent and episodic treatment-resistant depression, and these episodes date back longer than I have been alive. Every 10 or so years, he would have a really, really difficult time, and during his low time, I want everyone to know he fought as hard as he possibly could. He tried everything to get healthy. I feel comfortable sharing this with you because him and I spoke about this in recent years especially, and he actually mused about writing a book because he framed his mental illness as his greatest demon, but also one of his greatest gifts. It was a gift that gave him clarity on priorities, on the fragility of life, and it gave him the ability to focus on what made him happy and what was truly important. And I think when we think about his last couple of years especially, it's exactly what he was doing. We can see the values that he held close in how he chose to spend his time. And his depression wasn't something he talked about often, in part because he was a very private person indeed, but mostly because when he was healthy, he truly was healthy and happy. I want everyone to know, as Chuck said, it's worth hearing twice. The Bruce that you remember, the laughs you shared, the memories you have, you'll see them in the slideshow. They are all genuine, and you didn't miss anything. When he was healthy, and when he wasn't, he wasn't. And he did not let his mental illness define him while he was alive, so we cannot do that in his death. We need to make sure we don't do that in his death. I also share this in an effort to continue the conversation around mental health. I really wanted to say something like profound here, but it comes down to really a simple idea of we need to talk about it more. I'm comforted to know that he reached out to many people here in the community and when he started struggling a few months ago. And I won't be able to thank those friends of his enough for showing up for him with unconditional support and without judgment. The researchers and doctors have a long way to go in terms of figuring out the brain. So in the meantime, it is really up to us to create space for conversations. We know the statistics, 1 in 4 people will struggle with mental health issues in their lifetime. I would venture to say in this room full of first responders, that is a much, much higher statistic. And society changes slowly. We owe it to my dad to make sure no one suffers alone. In the time since my father have passed, so many people have shared that he helped them or their loved ones through a mental health struggle or crisis. He was the person many turned to for support and help, and not just because he was a doctor. We can honor his memory by being that person for others, by meeting others with support, compassion, empathy, and without judgment. I would encourage everyone to think about what Bruce would do in moments that you sense someone is struggling, or if someone opens up and shares their experience with you. As Chuck said, fundamentally, these struggles are no different from other illnesses. The difference is the stigma. These illnesses people live with every day, and sometimes they are fatal. So put simply, we need to do a little bit better. We need to look out for each other and show up for each other in a way that Bruce would have, because we owe him that much. So I want to conclude with once again thanking everyone who's here and anyone who's watching online for coming together to celebrate my amazing dad. I'm so grateful for almost 30 years of memories and moments with the most wonderful father a daughter could ask for. Thank you also for sharing your stories and memories, especially over the last couple of months. It's been amazing to hear about how he touched the lives of so many people. My dad truly valued spending time with loved ones, being outside, and having fun. I invite you all to carry those values with you. Please take good care of yourselves and each other. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Max. I'm married to Holly. I've said the speech several times now and cried every time during it, so I'm going to do my best to not cry on this one. I think I've said it enough that I won't. So I'm going to start here. I'd like to say a few words about the man that I know Bruce to be, the father I saw him being, as well as the grandfather that he was. As a father-in-law, Bruce was pretty much the best you could ask for. In my much too short a time with Bruce, I've always known him to be kind, humble, supportive, funny, caring, talented, just to name a few traits. He was the kind of guy that let his accomplishments speak for themselves and made everyone feel comfortable, valued, and appreciated. One of my first times meeting Bruce was actually here in Whistler, when Holly brought me out to meet her dad. Of course I was nervous. You always want to impress your girlfriend's dad. So Bruce suggested that we all go mountain biking. We all know where this is going, yeah. I was excited and nervous, seeing as the last time I went mountain biking, I was 10 years old. And I flew over my handlebars both the first and second run. I actually only lasted 3 days at mountain biking camp that summer. So we went to rent bikes, and we got these super wicked mountain e-bikes. This made sense to me. You know, I was in my late 20s, Bruce would have been in his early 60s, so an e-bike made sense. However, it became clear that the e-bikes were only for Holly and myself. Bruce was going to use his own mountain bike, no battery power for him. I thought. This guy took one look at me and thought I needed a battery-powered bike. I mean, he was right, but still, it's not the impression I wanted to make early on. So we proceeded to bike up the hill, which I had never really associated with mountain biking. I always just assumed mountain biking was the fun part when you went down the mountain. So Bruce knew the trail. He set the pace all the way up the hill. I couldn't even keep up with him with my battery-powered bike. So he was forced to turn around to make sure we were all right throughout the entire ride. He probably biked twice the distance just coming back to check on Holly and I. This is when I got a glimpse into what an absolute athlete Bruce was. I think I was able to save some face on the way down the hill, though, when my inner daredevil took over. Both Bruce and I giddily flew down the mountain where we waited for a particularly frustrated Holly to show up. She's not a fan of speed or risk. That night, a few of Bruce's friends came over for a dinner and a jam session. This is where I got a glimpse of what a talented musician and artist Bruce was. He sang, played piano, guitar, got everyone involved, and his love and passion for music came shining through. Over the years, I got to see his passion for music grow, whether it be over FaceTime, when he would regale Holly and myself about his many jam sessions or many of the songs he was learning, or when he would come and visit and serenade his grandson Jackson on piano and guitar. He seems to have made a lasting impression on Jackson as well, because Jackson is obsessed with the guitar. Holly's already touched on it, but Jack so much so that he got kicked out of baby music class because he was distracting and obsessed with the teacher. Holly and I love that Jackson's fascination with guitar is a direct result of his time with Grandpa Bruce. I won't go into his professional accolades because there are many others here who can talk more on those points. We all know Bruce was an incredible doctor and was not only the former director of medicine at Whistler, but also started to teach and help pass along all the knowledge that he had gained over the decades of helping others. I feel fortunate to have known Bruce and spent quality time with him. Holly and I came to Whistler shortly after Bruce's passing and spoke with many people. I was floored with the outpouring of love and mutual feelings of loss for the presence and the person that Bruce was. He truly meant so much to so many people. I left Whistler saying that when I die, I hope that people speak half as well about me as they speak about Bruce. In closing, there's something I heard on a podcast the other day. A man had lost his wife after many years together. And he said that one of the hardest things for him was never being able to say, "Remember when," again. The shared life and experiences were now for him to remember alone. That really struck me because I was getting to the point with Bruce that we had enough shared experiences where we could say, "Remember when," together. Remember when we went surfing? Do you remember when you played Novello Bianche on the piano for Jack when he was 2 weeks old? Excuse me. Remember when we celebrated your birthday in Ottawa and we had what felt like a 2-hour conversation about EVs and Elon Musk? There are many people today who are lucky enough to have decades of memories with Bruce, and I mourn for your loss. I mourn for all of our losses, the loss of a great man who we can no longer say, "Remember when" with. Even though we cannot say it to Bruce, let's make today a day of remember whens with his family and friends. Let's all make a point to celebrate the life of a great man, an honorable man, an amazing father, an amazing grandfather, brother, son, and friend. Cheers to Bruce. We miss you, we love you, we celebrate you, and we cherish your memory. Thank you.
Thanks, Max. Thanks, Holly. Beautiful. I would like to acknowledge that was my cell phone that went off. I've heard it's good to have one good humiliation a day, so I'm done for today, I hope. That was my son. My phone was on silent, but he's on emergency bypass, so. The other thing I forgot to point out was all of Bruce's gear here that the patrol helped us to set up here. I just wanted to point out a couple things. You'll have a chance to look at it later. But this is his guitar up here, the Dark Taylor, that he loved. And when he got that, he was just beside himself with joy at how well it sounded and how well he played it. His surfboard, which Holly just allowed me to take to Hawaii to surf on in the last 2 weeks, just came back a couple days ago. All the dings were already there. And his bike and his wing foil and so much other stuff for you to have a look at later. I'd like to introduce now Natalie. Natalie is Bruce's sister-in-law. She's the wife of Paul. Paul and Brian are Bruce's brothers, and they were so important to each other. Bruce talked to me about this on numbers of occasions, how important Paul was to him and how important Brian was to him. And he definitely had a big brother care for his siblings. So Natalie, come on up and have a few words.
There's a lot of you up here. I'm used to speaking in front of junior high kids. I can say you're far more well-behaved. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natalie, and I was fortunate to be able to call Bruce my brother-in-law. Bruce's parents, Mary and Will, who are both 94, were unable to be here in person today, but are watching from Vernon, where they are being well cared for by Bruce's youngest brother, Brian. They are not here in body, but are most certainly here in spirit. I know they would be incredibly touched by the presence here of all Bruce's dear friends who have come to help remember and celebrate him. It is apparent to me, looking out at all of you, that he touched many lives. My first encounter with Bruce occurred 7 years ago when I initially began dating his brother Paul. Mary had invited me to join the Mohr clan in Kimberley, where they were then living. After spending Christmas with my family, I headed to Kimberley on Boxing Day to join Paul and to meet his brothers for the very first time. When I pulled up into the driveway, Brian came out to meet me. He was so sweet. He gave me a kiss on the cheek, said welcome to the family in his quiet way, and proceeded to take my bags into the house as he explained that Paul was up at the ski hill picking up his boys. Into the house I went, and down the hall came Bruce, plodding along in an exaggerated fashion, carrying 2 full duffel bags, one in each hand. "Well, Princess, I hope you're happy. I just got kicked out of the good room because of you." Instantly, I knew I was going to love him. Totally my sense of humor. He teased me, his parents, and brothers mercilessly, and we loved it. Over the last number of years, I have come to witness many times over what a loving, generous, and thoughtful son, brother, brother-in-law, uncle, father, and grandfather he was. Paul told me Bruce was the best big brother he and Brian could have ever wished for, and the most loving and caring son a parent could ever want. My heart was softened when I heard how Bruce had treated Paul's sons Aaron and Andrew, along with Holly, of course, to a surprise vacation to Disneyland. At the time, Paul was raising his 2 boys single-handedly after his first wife had passed a few years earlier. Bruce was the best big brother indeed. Paul also had very fond memories of summers when his boys were young, spent with Bruce and Holly in Whistler. The group even ventured together to Nitnat one summer to enjoy some of the best windsurfing North America has to offer. Now that the 2 brothers were mostly retired, Paul was so looking forward to further visits to Nitnat and Turks and Caicos with Bruce, so both could hone their wing and wind foiling skills. Bruce called his parents daily and visited often to spend time with them and to make sure they were doing okay. He was a fierce advocate for their health care and for his brother Brian's as well. He was constantly giving them of himself and wrote and performed the sweetest song for his dad's 90th birthday. Bruce sure loved his music. Last Easter, he even brought chocolate eggs and treats to hide so his parents could have an Easter egg hunt. "They're the kids now," he said. Such an incredibly loving son and brother. The first time I entered his home in Whistler, it was immediately crystal clear to me how much Bruce loved his daughter Holly. He had pictures of her in every single nook and cranny of his home, from over his kitchen sink to in every bathroom in the place. And when his first grandchild Jackson came along, I witnessed that same adoration. We received regular emails with video clips and pictures of that cute little guy. Jackson, too, was honored with a special song that his grandpa Bruce wrote especially for him. Bruce routinely rented Airbnbs up at Silver Star, invited us to join him on all the major holidays and to his home in Whistler in the summer. He was so very generous. One of my fondest memories will always be cross-country skiing with him. Now, I use the term skiing with him loosely, as he could complete 2 loops of a trail in the time it took me to do one. But I sure did love to see how happy and energetic he was, enjoying his great outdoors. Bruce stayed with us in Calgary for a few days, 2 weeks before he passed. He'd been teaching at a medical conference, I believe, and he told us straight up as soon as he entered our home that he was not feeling well, but was doing everything in his power to stay strong. He didn't want to attend the conference, but he forced himself to do it. "I think if I just keep busy, I can manage this," he told us. He really felt he knew what he had to do and also believed he had all the tools he needed to win this battle. The very last bike ride we did with him was on May 12th near our house. We always called the ride Bruce's Loop because he had been the one to introduce the trail to Paul years prior. I loved it and did it most days after work as well as on weekends. Bruce wasn't well, but he knew the bike ride would do him good. So off we went. Part of the ride winds through a fairly small marshy wetland area. This day, we happened to see a little muskrat swimming in the pond. I told Bruce, "Hey, you must be a good luck charm, because I've never seen that little guy before. On we went and finished the ride. Bruce left our place the next day, promising to keep connected with caring friends and making sure to do some sort of activity every day, even though he really didn't want to. He was determined to beat his depression and wanted to do it on his own terms. I know his brother Brian called to check up on him every day, and I know other caring friends did too. Just 2 weeks later, he was gone, and we were and continue to be absolutely heartbroken. The morning we found out about Bruce, I told Paul we should do our regular bike ride, even though we were both numb and devastated all at the same time. We honestly felt like we were living in an alternate universe. But I know a bike ride always helps, and I honestly didn't know what else to do. So off we went to ride Bruce's loop. We got to the wetland area, and who did we see again in the exact same spot but that cute little muskrat that I hadn't seen since the time we first saw it with Bruce. Not 10 seconds later, Paul and I heard a thunderous splash. We looked to our left to see an enormous bald eagle just coming up out of the water with a fish in its gigantic talons. Its energy was immense, and instantly the thought, "That's Bruce," came into my head. Never have I ever seen a bald eagle in that marsh, let alone in the city of Calgary, and I'm outdoors every single day, often at Nosell Park, a huge nature reserve in our city. I shared my thought with Paul immediately, who at the time I'm sure thought I was a bit nuts. Fast forward to June 24th, when we had a special family dinner in Vernon to honor Bruce. The immediate family was there, including Holly's dear mother, Anne, who I'd met very briefly only once before. I told her my story about the eagle, and she leaned into me and said, "Natalie, the bald eagle held a place of special significance to both me and Bruce. In fact, so much so that we both had images of a bald eagle carved into our wedding bands." Not only did Anne tell me this, but she said she too had seen a bald eagle perched near where she and a friend were sitting not long after Bruce passed away, and it stayed near them for an unusually long time. I, for one, believe that when our body dies, our energy, our spirit, whatever you want to call it, lives on. I truly believe that Bruce is now at peace, free as an eagle, his spirit soaring over the waters he paddled, the snow he skied, and the trails he rode on. Bruce, we love you and will forever remember your vibrant energy, your sharp wit, your beloved music, and your loving, caring, generous soul.
Thank you, Natalie. And you're not the only one to have encounters with birds in the days after Bruce died. There are a number of us here that had similar experiences with hummingbirds, with ravens, with that kind of defy, even for a skeptic scientist like myself, that you kind of go, there's something going on here. Our next speaker is one of Bruce's oldest and longest friends, longest term friends, I should say, John. They were medical school colleagues together. They were roommates at medical school, and John and his wife Pam are GPs in Tofino. I don't know how you got that gig, but that sounds pretty great. And did you get Bruce into wing foiling, or was it the other way around?
It was mutual.
It was mutual. And it wasn't competitive from what I understand. Right. No. And I heard you were a little better. I'm just saying, yeah. Well, come on up, John.
Yes, with me is my wife Pam, the one with the wheels in the front here. Two of my children, Ian and Sylvia. My eldest, Claire, can't be here, but we considered Bruce a member of our family. And anyways, this past April, Pam and I were in Whistler for our monthly week-long ski trip. We had our visit with Bruce. We had a great dinner. We discussed interesting medical cases, among other things. But on a return trip in May, Bruce was in a a severe depression. As Bruce described it, it came on overnight, heralded by an unpleasant feeling in his stomach. This was a familiar feeling to him from his bouts of depression in the past. He knew what was coming. He really couldn't hide it from us. He was severely depressed. To Pam and I, it seemed hopeful since he was open to talking about it. Also, he was under the care of a professional, and his friends in Whistler gathered around him. You know, Chuck, Ron, and others. A week after that, he was dead. My friendship with Bruce started 43 years ago at the beginning of medical school in Ottawa. I was drawn to Bruce immediately. We were running together in the Gatineau Hill trails, almost before classes had started. Living with Bruce and 4 others during the first couple of years of medical school led to ridiculous levels of penny pinching. We were frugal, both of us. We lived in an unofficial cross-country ski team house with 4 others. We egged each other on, keeping the house temperature just above zero in the winter to save money on heat, living off of 40-pound bags of rice and flour. We sat around the dinner table in our down jackets and toques. Our last year of medical school was much more upscale. 3 of us shared a newish condo on Renova Street in Ottawa. John Ray, Bruce, and myself. The so-called Renova boys, the ones you'll see in the picture on that table with the stethoscopes. By now, Bruce had a well-entrenched nickname, Torch. He couldn't pick up a pot or pan without burning something. For Bruce, cooking and eating was something to be done quickly and with dispatch. Turn it on high and get it done. Cross-country skiing with Bruce in the Gatineau Hills may have put us behind in our studies, but it is some of my best memories with Bruce. From then on, over the years, it was mountain biking with him, skiing in all of its forms, surfing, and most recently, wing foiling. There's his equipment over there, which we bought together, identical equipment. Yes, he was competitive, likewise for me, but it was always friendly and didn't detract from our pleasure of riding or skiing together. It was enhanced. Once on a visit to my wife's family cottage on the Sunshine Coast, the desire to push the limits got the better of him. On the first day, morning time, the water is glassy, time for a water ski. Bruce is going to show us how it's done. There he is on the dock, one ski, standing, dock start. Some claim to have heard the hamstring tear. I didn't. The rest of the visit from then on for Bruce was going between the couch and the bed, popping Advil. There were other visits to the cottage on the Sunshine Coast, sometimes with Holly. I don't know, Holly, do you remember coming with that exchange student from Paris?
Oh, yes, I do.
She was afraid there was a bear behind every tree, and I think it was her first experience with mosquitoes. Bruce loved his work as a doctor. His visits with my wife, Pam, and I would lead to discussions of interesting and difficult medical cases late into the evening. It never got old. His love for medicine, the pleasure he got from helping people was always on display. He couldn't help but take on issues relating to the deficiencies in the medical system. Medical transport of critically ill and injured patients to a higher level of care at Whistler was woeful, which I could relate to from my similar experience in Tofino. He dived into it. Over years, he wrote letters, attended endless meetings, doggedly working his way up the chain of command, finally meeting with the Deputy Minister of Health. He got funding for Whistler for an advanced paramedic, which I believe was a win. Early in his career, Bruce completed a sports medicine fellowship through UBC, which led to work with the Canadian ski team and becoming a heli ski guide and doctor. His most harrowing heli ski guiding trip was taking the Prime Minister down a mountain. The PM was way in over his head and not looking well. He wasn't sure he would get him down in one piece. Having the near demise of Jean Chrétien on his hands may have contributed to Bruce giving up heli guiding. My most harrowing experience being guided by Bruce was a trip down Spanky's ladder for my first time. This was not long after it had opened. Bruce tore down the slope in his telemark gear, confident and stylish, while I followed, shaking in my alpine gear. Bruce loved his coffee. In contrast to his cooking, he was very particular about making his brew. On visits to Tofino, he always had tips and lessons for me and my coffee technique. Now, here's an anecdote for you. Years ago, Bruce was in the hospital for hip surgery. He chose a spinal anesthetic. The next morning after surgery, he has a severe headache. Diagnosis, spinal tap headache. Treatment, lie flat, don't get out of bed, bedpan and all. Progress, no improvement. The medical team revisits the differential diagnosis. New treatment, cup of coffee. Progress, resolution of headache. Diagnosis, caffeine withdrawal. He did love his coffee. There were gaps, sometimes years, between our visits. Work and raising our kids and physical distance intervened. When we did get together, it was as if no time had passed. We just picked up where we left off. With time, Bruce was having increasing problems with his weight-bearing joints. First, it was his hip. Then his knees were giving him grief. Skiing was out. He needed something new. He was never into water sports. As a swimmer, he was a sinker. To my surprise, he took up sup surfing. With some personal tips from Laird Hamilton in Hawaii, he became an accomplished surfer. Part of his training required more trips to Tofino, more visits, yay. Then came wing foiling. Pam and I had a boat in Tofino to tow a wing foiler in training. More visits, yay. He then was dragging me off to Mexico to upper skills with the wing. Our visits with Bruce were really escalating in the last couple of years. Music was big in Bruce's life, something he shared with my choir-loving wife. It was wonderful to see Bruce become more and more inspired by music in the last few years. Using voice and guitar, you could see him refine and improve his performance. He loved it. More music, less work. Bruce had many gifts to share with us. My time with Bruce, charging down slopes, riding through the woods, plunging down waves, will be cherished memory for me. The new friends he gave me is a gift that will endure. And so many of you are here today. Bruce has been my dear friend, a dependable friend, a forgiving friend. Goodbye, my friend.
Thanks, John. Beautiful. Robin, you can start making your way up here. I'd like to introduce Robin Forsyth, another musical long-term friend of Bruce's. And besides singing at open mics and gigs here in town, they also, once a month, would go to seniors' homes and perform together, to the Hilltop House and to Shannon Falls, and sing for the residents there. And I know Bruce loved that. He loved going to the seniors' homes and singing for them. And you're going to sing with the choir, I believe. And the choir, that choir was really important to Bruce. You know, I would say, is it Tuesday night they get together? Yeah. I said, can you come over on Tuesday night? No. Got choir. So, welcome.
Those residents really liked Bruce. You should have watched them swoon when he did a little bit of Elvis covers. So Bruce and I sang together, side by side, carefully listening, weaving notes and phrase. He was on constant vigil, seeking ways to support and enhance, hearing, matching tone and intent, present and attune. When we sing together, we breathe together. We're connected in melody and in with rhythm, because when we sing together, our hearts beat almost immediately, becoming uniform peaks and troughs. They come together in unison. And I'm sure Bruce would actually like you to know that this isn't just poetic musing. This is actually scientifically supported, as in like a study published in the Frontiers of Neuroscience. So I'm not just spouting things off. We connected. Bruce attuned himself to others. And I was so grateful to be in his circle. So I wrote this song a couple years ago. And Bruce sang it with me, his rich baritone, harmonic and sustained. I never imagined I would sing it for him, yet here we are. Fortunately, Bruce left many ties that bind. His friends, Bob, Tony, and MJ, are going to accompany me any moment on the stage. And we're going to sing this along with Bruce's choir, the Whistler Singers. And hopefully we can all unite in breath, in heart, and in song. I can project. I got this. Oh, I do. This is MJ Mullen, also Bruce's guitar teacher. Good friend Tony Moser and Bob. And these are the many Whistler Singers. And the song is called Bird's Eye View. You have sound? There we go. Gathered near the sea, in a place you called home, each there to hold, each there to mourn. You knew the sun would shine on your chosen day. Tanner would sing, your grandchild play. When you talk a bird's eye view and flew away. When you talk a bird's eye view and flew away. What you gave to life in flocks in return, passion you taught, voracious you learned, to the very end, generosity. It wasn't love you chose to be set free, and you taught a bird's eye view and flew away. And you taught a bird's eye view and flew away.
not fair. Sometimes we blow far from where we're going, with results the way you chose to navigate. You're swan song, and you took a bird's eye view and flew away. And you took a bird's eye view and flew away. And you took a bird's eye view and flew away.
Okay, thank you very much, Robin. That was a beautiful, hauntingly beautiful song you wrote and sang. Thank you, choir. I'd like to bring up Paul Walden. Paul is another longtime friend of Bruce's. They were residents together back in 1985, and they first met on a ski trip here to Whistler, and then end up working here since 1996 as colleagues in the Whistler Healthcare Center. And Paul is also, although he's trying to cover it up, is also a member of our Blackcomb Ski Patrol family. So, welcome.
Big on red.
Welcome, Paul.
So why am I wearing gas station coveralls in red? One, they're Bruce's. Two, there's a story. Clark Lewis, who's one of the other emerge docs at the clinic, has lost too many friends prematurely in this town, but he would always have a tradition of having the backyard barbecue as a memorial and have everybody come, and he did that for Bruce as well, which in fact helped me a lot. But Clark tells a story that every time Bruce would come, he'd show up in red gas station coveralls. And so if somehow a memorial means red gas station coveralls, it meant I have to wear them for his. One of the weirdest parts about this is it just doesn't seem real that Bruce is gone. And I've talked to a lot of people at the clinic. In fact, fortunately, the clinic has been a wonderful place where it's full of hugs and full of support. But we also, the same thing, we just kind of think that we're going to see him walk around the corner, just like you would do, one for work, but two, he'd come in and use the computer. And I think, well, don't you have a computer at home? But anyway, it's good to see you, Bruce. Anyways, last night I dreamt about him. I've never dreamt about him before, but last night it was clear as day. I was standing there in front of the nurse's station in my scrubs, and Bruce comes around the corner, and he's dressed in shorts. He's got on a Hawaiian shirt, and the background's this dark blue, almost black, with really bold, loud pink hibiscus flowers on it. And he just looked so comfortable, so confident. He even looked regal for some reason. And he came and gave me a hug. And that was the end of the dream. But I knew he was telling me, I'm okay, Paul. I'm okay. It's all good. It's funny, too. I have a float home now down in North Van. And the natives have put up a big tower that's supposed to be for eagles. And I had never seen an eagle until 2 days ago, and then the eagle was sitting there all day. Absolutely all day, it just sat there. I didn't realize it was Bruce until now. So because I'm one of the emerge docs at the clinic, I feel partly my job is to talk about him as a doctor. I could say lots of other stuff, but I'll leave that to others. Bruce was a great doctor. He wasn't just a good doctor, he was great. Very diligent, very concerned, very caring, always there. He really was great. He also embraced teaching. Worcester Healthcare Center, every single emergency medicine resident in British Columbia does a month of training at the Worcester Healthcare Center. And Bruce has always been very involved with that, very giving in his time and teaching to the residents. He also has joined a teaching group. It's a class called CASTED, which goes across all of Canada, teaching orthopedics. It does seem so appropriate, even though that course is based out of Toronto, that a Whistler doc's part of it, and he embraced that. He made YouTube videos of shoulder dislocations and other techniques. He really loved teaching. The other thing that I think I want to share with you, COVID was an amazingly tough time for probably everybody, but at the clinic and in healthcare, it was just huge because everything in one day pretty much changed. Bruce was the chief of staff then, and he was our point man for that. Definitely others in the clinic, everybody was involved, but Bruce was the biggest. He had to put himself through just Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting with the people from the city, the people from the province, the people there. So I thank Bruce huge for the time he put into there because it helped us a lot. He was definitely ready to pass that torch on after the couple of years when it started to slow down. But he is a very diligent, very accomplished person, and I thank him and I miss him. And I know now, actually, he'll be beside me more than even he was before. When people are with us, we kind of take them a bit for granted. But when they're gone, they're actually almost with us more. And I know that's how he'll be with me. So thanks, Bruce. I love you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Paul. Next, we'd like to invite Jim Campbell up to stage. Jim has known Bruce for over 40 years. You first met in Calgary, is where you met, and he shared many of the passions that we all shared with Bruce, sporting-wise in the outdoors. And I know you're an accomplished sailor because I saw you on Alta Lake a few times when you would come visit him every summer in the summertime. So come on up, Jim.
There's been so many beautiful stories today, and I had a nice composed talk, but I need to talk from my heart. And boy, Bruce really struck my heart. There's so many stories I could say, but really it's the compassion Bruce had for life. It was his joy, his giving, his natural nature, his love, his joy. He just gave it to everyone, and that was all represented in all the stories we've heard so far. And I was just one who got to share it because he was my housemate for several years when he had just come to Calgary. And our friendship is just growing and strengthened in so many ways, diverse ways. And just like Chuck had said, he had shared depression with him. Well, I shared depression with Bruce too. I got struck by a truck and had a long-term recovering. But who was my best cheerleader? But Bruce. He was always there. We always talked. We continued to talk, even until the time he was in Calgary recently, given his emergency medicine seminar. And I had the privilege of enjoying a good 3-hour conversation with Bruce that evening, and my heart was going out to him because I could feel this was no longer the Bruce that I knew. He was being overcome and overtaken by a disease that he couldn't control. And I could say that because he didn't have that vitality, that compassion that he always had. He was second-guessing himself with a lot of self-doubt. He didn't think he was a good father. He didn't think he was doing anything well. And there I was saying, no, Bruce, that isn't you, but it was just a sign of what had been happening. And so we had shared all this compassion. There's no one that had more fun and more joy. There's no one that could make you laugh and giggle more than Bruce. He had this mischievous eye at times. Man, he'd get you rolling on a story, and then there'd be a punchline, and he'd get you again. You know, he just had a beautiful way of diffusing things. My children loved having to come out here and visit all the time. The adventures that I had, I couldn't go on half the adventures that Bruce wanted me to come on. But, you know, it didn't matter whether I got to enjoy beautiful skiing with him. It could have been a hill way too high up there. It could have been going down some cross-country trail or backcountry ski adventure. It didn't matter whether I was on my stand-up paddleboard. You know, Bruce was always the champion. But what I do remember is when he was doing his internship in Calgary, is here he is working all night long, exhausted. And yet there'd be times when he was doing emergency medicine there, he'd say, Jim, can you play a game of squash? I really got to work out some stress. 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm out there on the squash court playing battle with him. And I don't know where he had the energy, but man, he had tenacity. He had the ability of digging down. And I can honestly say I lost a lot more games than I won playing him. It almost didn't matter what sport or what activity we did. It didn't matter whether it was winter triathlons, summer triathlons. Bruce was out there in the leaders pack versus a lot of us in the middle of the pack. So I don't want to take too much time in that regard, but a couple of stories that come to mind. One is, I'm sure there's a ton of great skiers here, but with Bruce, when he was recently in Calgary, not feeling good, we couldn't help but reminisce about the most magical day skiing we ever had. And that was down in Whitefish, Montana. We had just run after run as it was snowing so heavily of just the champagne powder. And how often do you get an entire day of just being in seventh heaven on your ski runs? All the heli skiing trips that I'd done with them, all the different cat skiing and other trips, nothing ever surpassed what I got to share with him that day. But the one thing I didn't get to share with him was when he was in Kauai, in the North Shore of Hawaii, and there was a day after a rainstorm, and the rain was lifting, and lots of mist out there. You could hear the surf in the background, he said. Double rainbow appeared as he was going around gently in the bay when one dolphin popped up, and then another dolphin. And the next thing he knew, he was in a pod of dolphins frolicking and playing all around Bruce. I can't imagine the magic of that moment in the mist, the solitude, no camera that he could take a picture. It was just his personal experience, his little piece of heaven on earth. And just to think of the joy and peace he brought all of us, the comfort we had in getting to do whatever activities we did with him, it was his joy, and he always made you feel important. And that's how I remember my friend Bruce. May peace be with you, Bruce.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jim. I'd like to invite up Karen Koski. Karen is the first girl Bruce lived with in Whistler. For a couple weeks. Was it Paul who?
When he first moved here, he needed a place to stay.
He needed a place to stay. Well done. And it was about 1996 or 1995, and since that time, Karen and Bruce have forged a deep friendship that I've watched and been part of, and skied together with, and done medical conferences and talks with, and he's a dear friend of Karen's, a colleague, and a mentor.
Thanks, Chuck. I really struggled with trying to think of something meaningful enough to say today. I mean, so much so that I stared at a blank piece of paper for over a week. And at the end of the week, I just wrote Bruce at the top to write something. And then a few days later, I wrote it in capital letters. Because again, I couldn't think of something meaningful enough. And that's really remarkable, given the 10,283 unbelievable things about Bruce that you could pick to speak about. But I just couldn't land on one. Until about a week ago, when thankfully I bumped into Tamerlane and Ron, and they reminded me of this book that I discovered a couple of years ago. It's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And it's a really short, really simple little book with just a couple of sentences and a really beautiful line drawing on every page. I loved this book because to me it spoke about the importance of family, home, and belonging. And not necessarily family in a genetically related sort of sense, but community. And not necessarily a physical home. In fact, in the book, the boy realizes that home is not always a place. It's where we feel that we belong with people we love and who love us. I love this book so much that I gave it to quite a few friends for Christmas that year. And friends that I hope that it would resonate with, but more importantly, friends for whom I was really grateful to have as my family. Most people liked the book, some more than others, but Bruce was the first person to call me as soon as he had read it, to tell me how much he loved it and how much it resonated for him. We talked for such a long time about how lucky we felt to have such a supportive, tight-knit, genuinely connected and caring community, and how much it meant to both of us to belong to this family. And Bruce definitely belonged to this community. As a matter of fact, he belonged to so many families. First and foremost, he had his nuclear family, whom he loved dearly and was so proud of. And a couple of weeks ago, when I got to reconnect with Holly and Max, I had to apologize for how much I knew about them. It felt almost creepy that I knew what their living room looked like. They had little play mats on the ground in their vacations, and because Bruce talked about them all the time and had pictures everywhere. But he also had his water sports family, his music family, his skiing family, his mountain biking family, medical family, his patrol family, and I'm sure many more that I'm not even aware of. But Bruce didn't just belong. He contributed so much to our collective families. He spent an incredible amount of time, energy, and emotion on really compassionate leadership and establishing a culture of kindness and inclusion. He was really generous with his time and mentorship, something I did frequently benefit from. He was the most inspiring teacher, always making everyone feel included, smart, special. He made people feel like they not only belonged, but that they were really important. And he was always available to help. In the book, the mole asks the horse, who is wise, "What's the bravest thing you've ever said?" And the horse replies, "Help." My hope is that Bruce's legacy is that we can keep building this genuinely compassionate, connected, and inclusive culture and continue to support each other and care for each other, and that we're all able to ask for and maybe more importantly receive help from our family. And that we always remember and are inspired by Bruce's wisdom and kindness. Going back to the book, the horse, who again is wise, says, "Nothing beats kindness. It sits quietly beyond all things. I think in the last few weeks, many of us have had moments where we felt overwhelmed by the loss of Bruce. It's just too painful, too unfair, too hard to understand or even believe, really. But I think the horse was right. Sitting quietly beyond our pain and loss is kindness. The kindness of Bruce and of our amazing family. And nothing can beat kindness. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen. Beautiful. Last speaker before the slideshow is Ron Mitchell. Ron has known Bruce for 27 years. I'm a little envious because he knew Bruce when he had a ponytail. We all know how much Bruce was proud of his hair. And when I grew mine long, he would always harass me. And so it was really good to know that he had a ponytail at one point.
Yes, Bruce had a ponytail. Actually had a mullet down to here that he would tie into a ponytail, I think when he went to work at the clinic and when he played hockey in certain sports. But we do have a photo of that as proof that you'll see on the slideshow. The beautiful stories we've heard, John, Jim, Karen, Chuck, Natalie, Holly, they all send the same message about Bruce. And much like what Karen said, I struggled for the last number of weeks in terms of what to say, and I started a few days ago by writing in capitals Bruce's story, and it was blank. But I am going to read what I ended up putting down, and there are a few things I'll probably add to it, but I'll keep it short because I only have 4 minutes, so we can get on. Bruce and I met in 1996. Our connection was basically Whistler activities, skiing, biking, hockey. And over the years, he became a best friend, but much like a brother. He became part of our family, and he allowed me into his family, knowing Holly, his mom and dad, brother Brian, Paul, and Natalie. He, since it is summer, and I do have a lot of stories about Bruce over the last 27 years, but I'm going to keep this one short. And in recent years, one of his traditions that he came up with is he would invite people over to his house on Lakeside, since he moved there 10 years ago, and open up the deck where you'd be. And he had a favorite drink. He was not a drinker, but this was a very special drink that he wanted to share with everyone. And it was the Blue Empress Gin, which is sitting on the table there. He was so intrigued by how this gin changed color from blue to this color. And like a kid in the chemistry lab, he would be in there starting to make his drink. And he was a very detailed person, as you know. It would only be 1 ounce of Empress, 2 ice cubes, the enough tonic to make it change color, and a slice of lemon. And then he'd hold it up. He wasn't in any rush to drink it. He was mesmerized by what it did. And like a chemist, he pondered over, why is it changing color, Ron? And I'd go, I don't know, Bruce, but let's drink it before the ice melts. And then he'd say, clink the glass together, have a sip, drink. And when it was finished, if it was the right mood, he'd say, maybe we should have just one more, right? Just one more. So that's what we did. Now, in honor of Bruce, the drink of today is the Empress Blue Gin. So I hope everyone will enjoy 1 or 2 when you're out in the foyer. I want to say something on a separate note here for a moment. 10 years ago, Bruce allowed me to go into his world. He trusted me with his depression. And we spent a lot of time together back then. And the other thing he trusted me with this time, because he came out a lot more and shared in the last couple of months with his depression. But he trusted me to find him. And I can honestly tell you, he was in a very peaceful place, that he had found his happiness. And that to me meant a lot, because he struggled so deeply, and he struggled so hard to get out of this, as all of us have said. But lastly, I want to close by saying Bruce at heart was a doctor and a caregiver. And he always had such good advice for all of us. And one day he had been down in the States in a couple days in Seattle or so, and he was coming back to the border, and he got stuck at the border a few hours. And I phoned him and I said, how was your trip? And he said, oh, it was great. It was a beautiful weekend. But let me give you some advice if you get stuck at the border. Never miss the opportunity to go pee. So in light of that, after you've had a few beverages, the restrooms are on the left-hand side as you go out. And please, think of it when you go in. Never miss that opportunity. Bruce, I love you. Thanks for all the memories, and be well, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. I'm just going to get just to dim the lights for the slideshow. I'd like to thank Holly for assembling this. Nicole Kosher, one of the Blackcomb Ski Patrollers, set up a Google Drive for all of you to deposit pictures in, and we had a lot. And Holly did this all in a few days, I think the last couple days. So here we go. I don't know how you pulled that off that quick. Like, I've done these before, and that wasn't 2 days. It was great. We're going to have a series of invitations that our friend group and Holly and Max would like to invite you to listen to and consider as we move forward. The first one I'm going to get Paul to come up and talk about just for a minute. He was going to mention it in his talk, and it's a scholarship that has been pulled together in record time by Paul and Anthony Chahal and Brian Rowe, I think you said. That's going to be a legacy for Bruce, and I'll let you talk a bit more about that.
I was going to talk about this at the end of the brief thing I did, but I got too emotional and forgot. Brian Rowe, who's a classmate in med school of John, but also Bruce, and he was a mentor to Anthony Chahal, who's at Vancouver General Hospital and one of the ski patrol. Anyways, they came up with the idea of a scholarship for UBC Medical School for a student to then do research in emergency medicine. And so on the back of the program, there's a QR code, but also the website where there can be donations. We're kind of hoping that this could actually go on in perpetuity. It would also just be such an awesome legacy in Bruce's name forever. So that scholarship, I hope we can all donate. Thanks very much.
The next invitation is to invite you to, as you leave, if you didn't on the way in, to sign a prayer flag in place of a guest book. That's what we're going to be doing, and hope to hang some of these in key places, perhaps patrol bump. Perhaps they're biodegradable and disintegrate, perhaps in some trees on some of Bruce's favorite trails. We'd like to invite you to support the Kelsey Patrick Dennehy Foundation here in Whistler that was close to Bruce's heart, a family here that's done a lot of work in mental health, lost children to mental health, and Bruce talked about that foundation quite often. We'd like to offer a general invitation to all of us to learn more about mental health, to go online, to read, to talk to people, to help to normalize it and bring it into the realm of communication as we talk about heart disease and cancer and other diseases, because it's no different. It's just a disease. It's a disease of the brain. We'd like to invite you to look out for each other, yourself and each other, for isolating behavior, for changes in diet, changes in sleep patterns, and the other signs. You know, Bruce, once Bruce and you, if you had a mental health episode and Bruce knew about it, he was kind of like he became part of his family. He would regularly check. He would always be having teas with people. I go, I didn't know you knew that guy. I go, yeah, I have a tea with him every once in a while. And slowly realized that these were people that had shared their mental health struggles with Bruce. And another way we can look out for and just, show up a couple blocks away with a cup of tea, see what happens. I'd like to invite you to consider practicing some of the things that we know work for mental health that have been studied. I'm an epidemiologist by training, so these have been trial studied. Meditation, yoga, journaling, dance, creative expression, connecting with others, exercise. These have all been studied. And best time to start is when you're healthy, because the practice comes in really handy when you need it. Not every one of those, but those have all been looked at. There's a lot of first responders in the room, and there's a new initiative called the ResponderAlliance.com. It's got groundbreaking work for first responders. Emergency room, a psychiatric nurse called Laura McGilvery has started researching this a number of years ago and now working with patrol groups, with search and rescue groups, with emergency responders, with police departments. And that webpage has a lot of resources for this group. And I know our local Whistler Blackcomb Patrol has champions on each side that are working with this. For us locally in Whistler, the seatoskysafetynet.com is the hub for all mental health and substance abuse concerns, and is a resource page that you can go to. Karen said something that I didn't think I'd hear yesterday. The new Whistler Health 360 initiative, which is a novel, nonprofit-based way of changing family practice that many other communities in BC are looking at to see how it's working, and it seems to be a real shift, a paradigm shift in how family practice is delivered. And what Karen said to me yesterday was, we almost have enough family physicians for everyone in Whistler. Do I quote you correctly? We're getting there. We're getting there, which is unbelievable, considering the gap in almost every area of BC. So the access to family physicians is so important for this. So if you don't have one, if you know someone don't have one, get on their website, whistler360health.org, and have a look. I'd like to invite us to live Bruce's passion for aloha, for joy in the present moment, for kindness, for humility, for inclusion, for sharing. We heard almost every one of us. We didn't compare notes before we talked, but we all talked about the same things. And if you want to honor Bruce, this is a legacy that I'd like you to really consider in how we treat each other and how we live our lives. I'm going to not be up here anymore. We're going to close with some music and Holly's blessing. So I'd like to invite you after the ceremony to stick around. We have 4 bars here at the Chateau reserved until 8 o'clock. We have a drink minimum to meet, and we're confident in this group that we can step up to plate for Bruce. And we have Empress Gin on offer, I know that for sure. But even if you want to have a Coke or a club soda or something there, contribute to the cause. It's going to help our group later if we can meet that target. So, and now I'd like to invite you to sing. I'm going to call up Jen and friends here, and the friends are Sam Bess, Thomas Studer, and Charles Stenner, and they are Bruce's musical family in the last few years here in his life, and and not just musical family for Sam, Thomas, and Charles. These are 3 relative newcomers to Whistler from other countries, and like Sam said to me today, this wasn't just my musical family, this was my family. So welcome.
You're stuck with some words too.
What's that?
Just when
Oh yeah. Jen is going to say some words as well. I forgot about that part of it.
Just when you thought it was over. Thank you so much, Chuck. So unlike Karen and Ron, who said they had some trouble coming up with some things they wanted to say, and Sam and Thomas and Charles, you can make your way up and support me here. My heart is in my throat right now, having me speak after the slideshow, and the honor of listening to all of these people who had the blessing of knowing Bruce a lot longer than I did has me really overwhelmed. About a week after he passed, you can sit, or I don't know. I don't want you to feel weird. I wasn't sleeping much, and although I only had the benefit of being in Bruce's life for the last 3 or 4 years, he had an amazing impact on me, and I wasn't sleeping. I was up in the middle of the night, and one particular evening, these words just started coming. I didn't sleep at all that night, so I got up and wrote them all down on my phone, and I feel compelled to share some things with you. I'm sorry if it goes over in time. I'm going to talk fast because I'm nervous too. I don't exactly remember the first time I met Bruce, but I think it was at Hurley Pass Lodge. We had a lot of mutual friends, and once I started playing a lot of music and performing around town, everyone was saying, "Oh my God, you've got to meet Bruce Mohr. He's a great musician."
So we went to the Hurley Pass Lodge a few years ago on a backcountry ski trip, and it was like I'd known him for years. We instantly connected, not so much through the skiing because, as everyone has said, Bruce was this amazing skier, but we really connected through the music. I talked to him about performing. I said I'd really gotten into that and was performing gigs around town, and he was interested for sure. Of course, I didn't know any of his musical past really because he was so humble. He didn't tell me all the things that you've heard about him going to the conservatory and playing music for all these years. He was so humble. But he was interested, and I told him I had a dream of playing a stadium show one day. And I didn't start playing guitar till I was, I don't know, 54 years old. And I saw that little twinkle in his eye, and I think Bruce maybe had that same wish as well. I encouraged him to come out and start playing some open mics around town. And he kept saying he needed to retire quickly from medicine so he could get busy playing a lot more music. When he first started coming to the gigs we had booked, he started out with this big white binder with all of his pages in there of all his music. Well, our first gig was outside at Cranked Cafe, and it was quite a windy afternoon. Robin was there as well, she'll remember. And Bruce sat down, and he got his binder opened up. The wind came in, and the papers were everywhere. And he needed the papers. The next time he showed up with clothespins. And there were clothespins. He soon graduated to the iPad, and the iPad was ideal for Bruce because he wrote down every single detail of every song that we were going to play. When Jen came in, when Robin came in, when the harmonies happened, when the interludes happened. He was very detailed. Last summer, we were all camping out at Nitnat Lake together. We also shared a passion for water sports. He and John were learning to wing foil, so they'd go out and do battle on the water all day. Bruce in his 30-year-old wetsuit and that crazy orange helmet you saw in the picture. It was quite a sight. Oh, and the knee pads, and his face was all white with zinc. But then we'd get to the best part of the day. You could hear him practicing in the morning. It was really quiet when the wind wasn't blowing, and you'd hear that beautiful voice coming through the trees, and he'd be practicing music. They'd go out on the water, and then we'd play music all night under the stars. It was absolutely magical, pure joy. And one of the funniest things, someone who spoke reminded me of this, he'd get so excited about things. He was playing this new song, and musicians will understand this, it was in double drop detuning. If you're not a musician, you don't know what the hell that is, and it really doesn't mean anything. Well, Bruce was going through the campsite and telling everybody, I'm doing this new song, and it's in double drop D. He was so excited about it. A lot of what I'm going to say we've heard before, but I feel compelled to repeat it. Bruce was so steadfast, and you could always count on him. We started playing a lot of gigs every month. He was a regular at the open mics, always with all of his gear. He very quickly amassed enough gear to power up a stadium show, as Holly can attest to. He kept telling me about all his new sound equipment he'd ordered. He would always get there early to set all of his things up. He'd show up with it all over his shoulders, and it was a sight to be seen. He also was very detail-oriented at the beginning, and he got very angry with me because I harmonized in my own way and not the proper way. And I would always end songs differently every time. These guys know that, and we kind of fly by the seat of our pants as a band. And Bruce would give me that look. He started veering off the path, which was fantastic to see. We were lucky enough to spend time together down in La Ventana this past winter in both December and February. And when we went down on the December trip, by the time we got there, Bruce had open mic gigs booked at all the open mic spots in La Ventana. He was obsessed, right? He played beach bar shows. We played them together. Before you knew it, Bruce was leading his own gigs, and in Bruce fashion, he was encouraging others to get up there and sing and perform. People that said they would never get up there and sing and perform, and they're in the room, they know who they are. And that's because Bruce had that way of making everybody feel so comfortable. My husband said to me after Bruce passed that what he wished he had said to Bruce when he was still alive was that he was always so comfortable around him. In fact, he was the person that Dave felt most comfortable with, which is a pretty amazing thing to say. He always put others at ease. He started hosting the summer jams at his house on Thursday afternoons. He was so excited to set up all of his equipment on the deck. Everyone was welcome, no matter your skill. He was always encouraging everyone else. He was so incredibly talented, but always so very humble. We started playing this song in early March that had a trumpet solo in it. And we thought, wow, it would be really great if we had someone that could do a trumpet solo. Well, guess what? Bruce says, I played the trumpet. He showed up with his trumpet, and it was absolutely amazing. And I think we got to perform that once. if I recall. Anyway, in the spring, I started seeing signs that something wasn't right with Bruce. He kept telling me he wasn't feeling good. He was seeming less confident. He was such a private person, I didn't want to pry. He confided in me in mid-April. We'd gone to a bluegrass jam together where he could barely bring himself to even play the guitar that he'd brought. When he told me after I pressed him what was going on and he said it was depression, I was relieved. I thought he was going to tell me he had some other terminal physical illness or something. I had shared with him in the past about my family's own struggle with mental illness and the suicides of both my mom and my sister. And when I shared that with Bruce, he had been so compassionate, but he never told me back then about his own struggles. When he confided in me that day in April, I thought, we've got this. Bruce is different. He's got his shit together. He's got everything. He's got health, access to resources, family, friends, passions like music, playing on the water, traveling. He's smart, he's educated. And now he's sharing. This is a good thing. I really felt that we could all help him. I didn't tell anybody else. I respected his privacy. I really wanted to tell these guys. I'm going to call them the boys. I call them the boys. Apparently Bruce did too. But I didn't tell anybody because it was his story to tell, and I didn't want him, I didn't want to betray his confidence. And I actually thought that Bruce could beat this because I thought that he was different. And to bring this all around, I know Holly spoke to this, Chuck spoke a lot to this, but I feel compelled to speak about it because of my own history too. Mental illness doesn't discriminate. It doesn't only prey on the weak or the poor. It has the power to take down greatness and reduce the absolute strongest person to a mere shell of themselves. And I saw this happening to Bruce over the last month of his life. He was trying so hard to show up. He was showing up for our music gig, showing up to play with us. The lack of confidence he was exhibiting was profound. He told me he couldn't think clearly and he didn't even feel worthy of playing music with us anymore. This absolutely broke my heart. Here was a man who had dedicated his life to saving and fixing the lives of others. He always had it under control, but he could not control this. And he knew it. It was bigger than him. It's bigger than all of us. And I saw that his wings were being clipped. He couldn't stop it, and he was just trying to survive. He was even telling others of his struggles, which for Bruce especially was so brave, right up until the very end. I truly believe that Bruce has his wings back now, and he's flying high. I wasn't going to share this story, but since we're on the bird theme, the day after he passed, I wanted to meet with each of these guys individually and share what had happened. And Charles and I were taking a walk together down on the 19-Mile Creek, and he couldn't get his head around what had happened. And as we were standing there talking, this hummingbirds never stop. They're always flapping. This hummingbird came within a couple feet of us and just sat there, stopped flapping its wings, and looked at us. And we were both so taken aback, and I said to Charles, I'm like, that's Bruce. Let us celebrate the fact that he's flying high, his greatness, his bravery, celebrate his eternal freedom. I know he's up there playing endless coffee house tunes in the sky. Bruce dedicated his life to saving lives, so what better legacy to Bruce than to share this story so we can attempt to save the lives of so many others who are suffering in silence with mental illness. We need to stop the stigma, the shame, the silence, and have more compassion and understanding so people aren't suffering alone. I'm honored that Bruce was my friend and that we got to make music together these past few years. Thanks for that, Bruce. So we're going to play a little music for you and end this on a energetic note. This is Thomas and Sam and Charles, and we've spent a lot of hours playing music together with Bruce. We're going to play a favorite song of his first, and then we're all going to join in a sing-along to Bruce. One of his favorite things was playing John Denver for Karen. I think that was one of the things that brought him the most joy. So in his honor, we're going to shout out Country Roads to Bruce and ask. The lyrics are on, if you don't know the lyrics, they're on your program, and we'll all sing it together. Thanks very much, you guys.
got the mentioned iPad here as well.
Oh yeah, we have the iPad in honor of Bruce, because he really shouldn't live without it. Check, no? I'm looking like Jimmy Buffett is because of Bruce, because this is how he would have looked, right? And this morning, my husband and I went to a garage sale that friends were having who were here, and he loved to hang on to things, old, new. So I bought. Thomas isn't wearing his. I bought the boys all used T-shirts at the garage sale, and they're wearing them. Yeah. So this song is called The Woods, and I think it's a song that actually Karen introduced Bruce to. Bruce introduced it to us, and we always enjoyed playing it together. So we're going to play it for you. Ready? There's to Bruce. We'd like to get Chuck and Robin up to come up and do a little country roads with us. Karen, too, if you so choose. We'd love to have you up here singing with us. Yeah, stadium show. Woo! Get the flashlights out.
We're gonna stand somewhere not near. Said I'll stand somewhere not near a mic. Yeah.
Does everybody have their lyrics ready? You don't need the lyrics for this. Oh, and another thing with Bruce is he was forever tuning his guitar. Like in between, it was unbelievable. In between every song, he claimed that his guitar was out of tune, and I now realize that was the perfectionist in him, and he wanted it to be just so. So here we go, Chuck. We listen to this all the time.
He's my mentor.
Yeah.
I've even told like whole poems while I'm trying to cover for him.
Because he's tuning his guitar. Everybody ready? Here we go. Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain, Shenandoah River. Life is whole there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, blowing like a breeze. Country road. Country road, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home. Country roads, take it away, Thomas. Country road, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home. Country roads, here we go. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home. Country roads, take me home. Country roads, take me home. Down country road. There you go, Bruce. Thank you so much. Oh, and since Chuck said you weren't going to hear from him anymore, Holly's going to come up and do a very special blessing to close this out. Thanks.
That was amazing. Jackson, Max, and I have belted that song last time my dad was in Ottawa with us. We told him he was not allowed to sing Wonderwall as his sing-along song, so anyway. Every night before bed, when I was with my dad, we would say this really, really short little blessing, and I now say it to my son Jackson when I put him to bed. It's very, very short. It goes like this. Thank you for this day. For love and happiness, I do pray. To be kind to others and follow your way. Amen. Thank you all for coming. It means a lot. And we miss you, Dad, and we love you. And thank you, everyone.